the men and women of the West. I'm Joe. And here with me is not Dan, but Therese Judaena, I guess you'd say Franco-American or Franco-American writer. And Therese is someone who, to anyone who reads mythic fiction over on Substack, should be a name they know. As your art and your writing is second to none. I mean, before we even really start, I'll just take people on a quick tour through this image, which you drew.
Oh, thank you.
Which is utterly gorgeous. Real quick, look at the detailed work here. Crown. That is just. I don't even know how you did that. And
it was
an
a lot of
animation. Really, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This really reminds me of the detailed work on the walls in Joseph King of Dream.
Yes.
Was it an inspiration?
No, actually, no. I was just thinking of trying to make a more naturalistic setting for the elves there. So I'm glad it turned out that way.
What I love is that what you did was you took the Tolkienian naturalistic element, but combined it with a more a very different kind of naturalism. And it feels very different from Tolkien's work and from Alan Poe's art.
Yeah, that's probably because one of my favorite art styles is like Art Deco and Art Nouveau. That's a little bit of what that's like. It's really beautiful.
It is. And I just love this piece.
Oh, thank you.
And I love what you do with the colors here. Father and daughter. Well, they have a similar shade of white.
Mm-hmm.
But then the color is completely different.
Yes, I do love to play with color. Color is one of my very favorite things.
So and I've noticed that you tend to play with color also in your writing.
Yes.
Where you like to describe color of things. I do the same thing. And it's just I'm just gonna mention there are only maybe 5 or 6. No, probably like 3 or 4 writers on Substack who like to play with the colors in their writing.
Wow.
And you're probably the biggest lover of doing that. And I have to ask, is it based in your painting history or your or is it something like color? You like to use it to read?
Yeah, I do like to use it for symbolism, especially. I learned that from some of the costume studies I've done for movies. I like to research the costumes. And that's something I noticed, that they use the color of, especially the costumes or even the setting, to reflect what's happening. So I enjoy doing that.
That is amazing. That you put so much thought into it. I don't know what to say.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I guess I like painting with words.
Oh, that's good. Painting's hard.
It is.
All right. Enough about my geeking out about your writing. Your magnificent. All right. So I should get to a list of questions.
Okay.
If you fail at answering them, you'll just be launched off the Bridge of Doom. Now, I won't ask what your favorite color is.
No, yeah, that would not be a good question.
All right. How did you get started writing?
Really, it was my parents, and the same thing with the drawing. My parents always made sure that we would. Well, I'm homeschooled, so I've always been homeschooled, and writing stories was just one of those exercises that we did. We just practice with our imagination, write our own little stories, even if it used our own characters, or if we borrowed them from another movie or something. It was just a lot of fun to do it that way, and I guess it just stuck. And then with art, it was the same thing. Like, we would practice making our own birthday cards for everyone in the family. So I think I'm the only person who actually stuck with drawing after that.
Your parents sound wonderful.
Yeah, they are.
That they sought your education in that way, but also encouraged you to pursue art like that.
Yeah.
You answered the second question.
Yes.
Seems like I'm racing 3 steps behind. What is your favorite fantasy movie and favorite fantasy book?
Okay. I don't know that everyone would count this as a fantasy movie exactly, but definitely one of my favorite films is Robin Hood with Errol Flynn. That was a really good one. I think that's from 1938. That was a really good movie. And then another movie that I like, I've only seen it once. It's been a really long time, so I don't know what I'd think of it now, but I don't know if you've ever heard of the movie Krull. It's kind of science fantasy, but not much science fiction in it. And I know that's been a big influence on my writing ever since then, which actually explains a lot now that I've researched it. So that's fun. I actually need to rewatch that one of these days. And then, favorite fantasy book. I mean, you can't top The Lord of the Rings. You really can't. I mean, even with films. But other than that, there's a fun kids book that I really enjoy reading. I actually read that just last week, which is one of the few things I've actually read recently. It's called Tuesdays with the Castle by Jessica Day George. It's really fun. It's got like a living castle that just creates rooms and stuff. It's just really fun to read, especially when I was sick. So that was good.
Okay. Favorite fantasy character?
Probably Arwen from The Lord of the Rings. I just like that she's so feminine, but she also has a really good balance of strength, too.
Not Eowyn?
I like Eowyn as well, but I don't know. Arwen was always someone I related to a little more, I guess.
No, I'm gonna ask. What of Luthien?
Luthien, yeah, she's definitely amazing. Yeah, I guess I never considered counting her just because she's not in The Lord of the Rings, I guess, because I'm used to thinking The Lord of the Rings and not... What, is she in the Silmarillion? I forget.
She's in the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Which is way better than Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's good. I remember I read that when I was like 14 or something. It was really fascinating. A little hard to get through, but worth it. I love all the lore and the history of that. It's just beautiful.
Yep.
I really don't think anyone can surpass Tolkien with that.
Well, you still gotta try.
Yeah, definitely. I think he would be happy if we did.
Yeah, he actually said that in a letter he wanted someone to surpass him.
Oh, wow.
but he was sad and disappointed that people stopped trying and didn't want to. And that instead you had things like Elric and what became ever more edgy.
Oh, yeah.
So he when it comes to the genre, he died disappointed.
Oh, that's sad.
But the only rival he really seems to have acknowledged, I think, was Howard. But Howard was doing competition. Like his Conan stories are just beautiful.
Yeah, I need to try those. I have never read them.
Read Hour of the Dragon.
Okay,
It's
I
actually
will.
a love story.
Oh, that's what I like.
Zenobia is the same archetype as Arl.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she has the same arc. And Conan goes on a great quest to prove himself to her and rescue her. So
that sounds really good.
yeah, and Zenobia's based off of Robert Howard's own love of his life.
That's sweet.
Yeah, same story as Lord of the Rings one. So it's really good.
Okay, I'm definitely adding that to my list.
And you could do a review later.
Yeah, I could.
Now I'm going to ask you, why doesn't the mainstream understand mythic fiction? And why does the mainstream seemingly hate it?
Those are good questions. I wouldn't say I'm the best person to ask because I don't keep up with the things that come out, like the most recent fiction, but I would suspect that it's probably something to do with it being so traditional. And it's, well, probably the greatest writers in the genre are all Christian. And that's probably one thing that they don't want, and they'd rather subvert it. Just, I don't know. I know they put in a lot of woke and politics. You can't really do that with fantasy. It doesn't make sense. But I'd definitely be interested in hearing someone else's opinion of that, since I'm not, I don't have the first-hand experience of it.
Okay. Black Knight calls mythic fiction the spirit of truth in literature, or at least the literary personification of the spirit of truth. What do you think of this idea?
I think that's actually a very beautiful way to describe it. Something about mythic fiction, like I think Tolkien said this somewhere as well. It's just a ready channel for truth. It's kind of like, I guess, adding sugar to medicine in some ways. It's easier for the truth and good in it to take root and inspire us because it's just something so beautiful. Fantasy is just, I don't know, I think it's a lot easier to digest anything good that's in it.
Yeah. Okay. One sec. I'll just. Now, this is going to be a little biased. How do you feel about this genre? Why is it the greatest?
I will say I do write multiple genres, but I don't know, fantasy has always been the one that I considered my own. Like,
Same.
I don't know. It kind of feels like home for me. It's just, there's a freedom in writing fantasy. You can just put all the most beautiful things into it and it makes sense there. Unlike if you're writing detective novels or something. I think what attracted me first to writing it was just the beauty of fairy tales. Like, there's always a lightness and goodness and beauty to them that isn't really in any other genre that I've noticed. You can create entire worlds, which for me are the ones that I would like to live in. Like the ones where the skills of the Middle Ages haven't been lost or thrown aside. Churches and architecture are still beautiful. Like monarchy is valued. The fashion is also amazing. Shows like the kind of fashion that shows the worth and dignity of the human person, unlike a lot of what we have now. And then just anything that I wish was commonplace in real life, I can make it happen in the worlds that I create. So I really think it's just the possibility of the beauty and creativity that attracts me to it the most.
You just sounded like Tolkien there.
Well, that is a good person to sound like.
Yeah.
He's just so amazing.
Oh yeah. I'm French. So I'm supposed to hate all people. I have to make an exception for it.
Yes.
I'm joking there. Now, tell me about your most recent story.
Okay. The most recent fantasy stories that I've been posting to Substack, those are actually the two that I've been writing the longest. I think it's been like over 10 years for both of them. So it's really exciting to actually get them going somewhere. So one of them is called Star of Silvaria. Yeah. So that one is, it's kind of like the story of a soul, kind of allegorical, but Silvaria is also the place I most often escape to. It's like my home country that's not real. So that one, the main character, her name is Essa. She gets swept off, kind of like with Narnia. She gets swept out of France, finds herself in a very strange country that is in a lot of danger from a mythical monster. And then she finds out that she's, in fact, the princess that was prophesied was going to arrive and destroy that monster. And the worst part is that that monster now has her family, who were also swept away with her. So that one's going to be...
The title really makes me think of the Lunar Silver Star story from 1992.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, actually.
It's a video game. But I just know the Lunar series because my artist brother used to play it.
Oh, yeah.
Favorite kingdom from
I would say it's definitely Silvaria. I mean, I have a larger world than just Silvaria, because with every fantasy story that I'm writing, as long as it isn't sci-fi, I am in the process of building a world that kind of fits with our map, but like on a different plane of existence. So I've got different countries that are inspired by other, like Silvaria is mostly inspired by medieval Europe, especially France and England. And then you've read Windswept, I think. And that one, the country, or I should say kingdom, Larmaval, that's predominantly French and also Lithuanian, because a lot of my friends are Lithuanian. So, yeah. I've got a lot of interesting countries planned that I want to create. So, but definitely Silvaria is my favorite. It's just very home-like for me, has all of my favorite elements. And it's a very safe place once you get rid of the monster.
Favorite fantasy race?
Elves. It's one of the only ones that I've written. I like to change them up a little bit, give different tribes, like have elves by the ocean or forest elves. There's a lot of room to play with, but they're very beautiful, angelic. I do create my own spins on them sometimes. I have a few different races. I had one in Larmaval, which is, the character Triss is one of those angelic beings. And then I also have are kind of elvish, I suppose. The swan maidens in Silvaria that come from, I don't know if you've read any of them, but there are a few fairy tales where women were turned into swans or something like that. So that's another of my favorites.
Okay. Favorite thing about your world?
Probably the fashion and the fact that if I was there, I could ride a horse all the way across the kingdom without running into fences. I think I would enjoy that. But yeah, I like designing the fashion for everyone in there.
So favorite character from your own story?
That's a hard question because my characters are often, I kind of think of them as my children. So I definitely can't usually kill them off, and I don't like to pick favorites. But I will say the one that I had the most fun writing was actually in Ransom. That's my science fantasy story. His name is Medros. He was actually the villain, but he was a lot of fun to write, so he's probably my favorite.
Okay. So why don't you like killing off characters?
I think it's mostly because I've read so many stories where my favorite character was the person who got killed or otherwise tragically met their demise. So yeah. It's just, I kind of want to create stories where, well, I mostly like to write for younger girls and young ladies. I just figure it would be nice if we had some stories where our favorite characters don't get killed. So usually I don't kill them off. I do have some characters who die or, well, yeah, just had a sad ending. But I try to be gentle with them. Also because once I kill them off, they don't exist anymore. Like, I can bring them back in my head, but I can't write about them anymore. That's just kind of sad to me. So I have to make sure I do it at the right time if they're going to get killed. What
you could always do is reference that they made it to the halls of Mandos.
That's true.
but so your target audience is more young girls.
Yeah, usually. But I have found that men really enjoy my writing for some reason, so kind of broadening out.
Total contrast to my own. I only seem popular with mostly men and boys.
Wow.
My writing.
Well, that's good. Unless you want women to be reading it, then I guess it's not.
I don't think about it. I just write.
Well, then maybe that's what your target audience is supposed to be. Maybe it is supposed to be men.
Maybe. Yeah. So
I mean, men do need a lot of good role models, so I think that's good.
True. Let's look at our questions. So when it comes to favorite author in the genre,
definitely Tolkien, and also C.S. Lewis. I enjoy all of the Narnia books. I mean, you just can't beat those two, really. I mean, it's hard to, but I'm happy when people try. But I also haven't had a lot of experience running into good fantasy books, so maybe I need more suggestions.
Well, Hour of the Dragon is a good place to start.
Yep.
And yeah, I will admit it's hard to find them. But if you get the complete Conan stories in the Black Book edition,
okay,
you'll have all the Conan stories.
Ooh, sounds good.
Which is hundreds.
Whoa, that's a lot.
And Howard wrote them all in under 10 years.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
So yeah. You've got their material for a whole bunch of novels.
Yeah.
And you also have the Cull collection, which is Howard's earlier character.
Okay.
So right there, you've got the Texan.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah. But now I will ask: do you prefer that fantasy be in like which medium do you think works best for it?
I think as long as it involves some of the reader's imagination, that's a good genre. I mean, good medium. Like, art is also good, writing's good. I suppose film isn't quite as good because it doesn't take much imagination to watch a film, but I do enjoy with books and other mediums that I get to make it part of the story myself. Like, I can imagine what everything looks like if I'm reading it. Or if it's a piece of artwork, I can imagine, okay, who are all these people? Where is this place? I can start making up my own version of what's happening. So, I don't know. I think as long as it does involve the imagination, I think that's really good.
Okay. So, Sara Silvaria, who would your chosen director be if you had to choose one?
Oh, wow. That's not something I had thought about. I would have thought years ago probably Peter Jackson because he did such a good job with The Lord of the Rings, but I'm not sure about that after The Hobbit. I mean, Hobbit was still interesting, but I don't know. That's definitely something I'd have to look into. It's a lot of trust you have to give to directors sometimes.
So would you prefer a movie adaptation or a TV series?
I think definitely movie would be better for Star.
Okay.
I don't think it would work too well for a TV show. Yeah. But either way, it would be fun.
So is the fun aspect important to you?
Yes, I do like, in my writing, I like to make sure it's still fun. Like, when it's not too dramatic. I just like to give the reader a break, I think. Just make it a little more like real life with interjecting some fun in there.
So more The Hobbit than Silmarillion.
Yeah. I don't think I'm, as much as I like the history, I don't think I'm too good at writing it, so.
But what do you think of the mainstream genre, not genre, but the mainstream publishers and others saying less is more?
Yeah, I did read your essay on that. I thought your take on it was really good. I do think it needs to have background. If you're going to build a fantasy world, you can't just jump into the middle of it and have no history. So I do like to get a lot of details. I know some people, when they read my stuff, they don't like the details. Like, they'd like me to cut it down some. But I don't know.
That's the best part.
Yeah, I have fun with the details. So, I don't know. I guess for some people it's taste, but I think it's necessary in fantasy for most people. I mean, you can always skim over things if you don't want to actually read it, but how are you going to understand it if you don't have history?
Yeah. Okay. Who is your favorite Substack fiction writer, and why?
I admit I've not had a lot of time to read fiction on Substack, especially in fantasy, unfortunately. I have not found that many fantasy writers whose work I enjoy it. I do like when I come across really good essays and also poetry, so I'm always looking for those. But I haven't found like one consistent writer other than yourself. So I'm still looking. I know I've got other fiction writers that I do enjoy reading, but not so much in fantasy yet.
Well, I'll have to send you another one of my table of contents.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, probably gems.
Yeah.
Okay.
That one looks very interesting.
Thank you. Actually, I attracted a new reader earlier today. Just by mentioning. I had a red-headed Scottish girl in it because she's obsessed with redheads.
Wow.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But
that's good. You never know what's going to attract a reader.
Yeah. But I do wonder. Have you ever considered taking one of your stories, considering you're an artist, and turning it into a bande dessinée or comic?
I did think about that one time. I was actually asked to consider that for Ransom. I'd have to definitely cut it down some because it's 3 books. It would take a very long time, but I think that would be fun to try sometime, at least with a short story. I actually did try writing a comic book one time. I never got it finished, but that was a very enjoyable process.
Well, it's easy to find a script format online.
Mm-hmm.
What you could always do is write a short story and then turn it metamorphose into that format or rewrite it, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And then draw it yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Now we arrive at the dreaded
Oh no.
part of the show. I have to solo layout you, and I'm gonna mute myself in a minute. Right. So the only thing people can see now is your lovely face and that wonderful background. And I will ask you, tell me about your world. And I do want you to brag as long as you can about it.
Okay, I will see if that's even possible. Okay, so I actually have 2 main worlds. One of them is just from my science fantasies. That one's just comprised of many different fantasy planets throughout the Milky Way and Andromeda. I won't really cover that since that's a little more sci-fi, although it is fantasy. I don't know, I like to make it more medieval than science fiction. I don't really like science fiction all that much, so it's kind of funny that I wrote it. But the second universe, or if you want to call it that, is called Magyura. It's a world coexisting in space with our own, but on a slightly different plane of existence. You could call it a dimension, but that sounds more sci-fi to me. So, it is... Okay, so it kind of matches our world. I think I mentioned that before. So, this is a world in which Silvaria and Larmaval and other kingdom islands are. In the future, I plan to introduce some kingdoms which will be inspired by Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, and others within Europe. For now, the country that I'm mostly working on is Silvaria, which we've been talking about. So I'm just going to focus on that one right now because I put a lot more work into it than I did with Larmaval since that's a shorter story. So Silvaria is set northwest of the Fracture Zone in the center of the Sargasso Sea. If you were to overlay it on a map, that would be roughly the size of Portugal, Spain, and then half of France. So it's pretty big. I don't know how that would compare to Middle Earth, but that's kind of the scale that I'm thinking. So it's a bit of an odd continent in Mariora, because the Sargasso Sea includes the Bermuda Triangle, and so a lot of people supposedly vanish in that area. And they've also been lost in the Sargasso Sea, which might also partly explain the Bermuda Triangle situation, but that's because of all the seaweed that grows there. So since it takes up a significant portion of the Atlantic Ocean, you can imagine that all kinds of people could have encountered danger over the centuries, which means that Silvaria has wound up an eclectic gathering of Vikings and Spaniards, Americans, British, and then also French, Irish, Italians on their way to and from America. So if someone was lost in the Sargasso Sea, if they fall overboard, attempt suicide, whatever, they usually end up in Silvaria. That's usually because, I think I'll get to that in a minute. But on top of all of that eclectic mix, the native inhabitants of Silvaria consider themselves to be the original Atlanteans, or at least the ones from the typical legend. So this is mostly due to the fact that Silvaria did, in fact, once reside inside the Atlantic Ocean, right where the Sargasso Sea is, but you can't see that now. It's just kind of like you go through a different dimension if you reach Silvaria. So most people aren't going to run into it unless they're drowning or some such thing. But when outsiders were determined to take control of this Atlantean country at some point in time, this would have been thousands of years in the past, they wanted to take all of the wealth and take over the culture that it was known for and fill it with their own less moral virtues and things. And as the story goes, God chose to protect the people from being tarnished by slavery and whatever else was being brought their way, and took Silvaria out of our knowledge, made it just invisible as far as we can tell, into that plane of existence that I'm talking about. So no one can enter Silvaria unless God specifically wants them to. And then on top of that, the native inhabitants of Silvaria are a mix of both mortal and elvish, along with some mermaids in the southeast, just because I like mermaids. So there are several tribes of elves they're a lot like Tolkien's elves. They're very classical, regal, but in tune with nature. They also possess a few magical gifts, except that these are currently cursed at the time of the story due to the monster, which I will then talk about in a little bit. So they can only use these gifts in time of need, so they can't really abuse them, thankfully, or that would be very bad. So one of their gifts is being able to shapeshift if they need it to protect someone else. And then, let's see. Historically, Silvaria was a single kingdom comprised of tribes, but with the death of the last princess, which was about 300 years before the story takes place, the various tribes rebelled against the idea of having a stewardess reign over them, and they split off into 4 smaller kingdoms outside the heart of Silvaria, which was left intact in the west. So those kingdoms are called Taiafair in the north, Avergard in the northeast, Aya in the southwest, and Roya in the southeast. And each of those is comprised of smaller provinces. There's also a 5th land carved out in the far east along the coast, which is called Amorzabad, and that's where our monster Typhon is. And I don't know for anyone who knows Greek mythology, that would be one of the titans named Typhon. So he's a little bit like that. So he's been trying to take over Silvaria ever since the princess has ceased to exist. And then, if you look at each kingdom, each of them has a different sort of ethnicity going on. So Tyfair is very Nordic. That's where all of the descendants of the Vikings are. Now, the thing is, you can't have Nordic countries in the middle of the Atlantic if this was still the Atlantic. So instead, what happened is they were the first ones to secede from the kingdom. And they're very stubborn, and they refuse to come back, despite the fact that there's a prophecy that a princess will come back, and that if the kingdoms don't reunite, Typhon is going to take over. But they refuse to believe that. They think that the previous princess made it up just to keep them in line, and so they've been cursed with a perpetual winter that's very freezing. It's exactly what you would expect in Nordic winters. And then in Roya and Avergard, that's where all of the elves reign, except that they are not as kind as you would expect from Tolkien's elves. Roya does not like anybody else. They don't want anyone visiting them. And Avergard, on the other hand, they're now a ghost town, but on a kingdom scale, because Typhon destroyed the ancient city. As far as anyone knows, that was where the oldest city in Silvaria was, which was the original inspiration for Atlantis. If you know the legend of the concentric rings forming Atlantis, that's what this city was. So, unfortunately, nobody has any idea where any of the inhabitants of this kingdom actually are. So it's very lucky if you actually run into someone. And then the final kingdom is Aya. It's the one kingdom which ignores Typhon. It thinks that it's safe. It's a water-based civilization, so they don't get affected as much by all the storms that Typhon creates. And they don't really care about anybody else. So this is also the area where most of the mermaids and other water creatures will live. I think that's about it that I want to share right now, because I have quite a lot of writing to do. I need to try and bring this back in December, since I'm taking a break in November.
Why are you taking a break?
I have a mountain of sewing to catch up on, so I need to take November for that. And then hopefully get a start on some writing for the chapters that I need to post in December. I might still post a chapter or two, because I do have a backlog, thankfully, at least for Silvaria. So that's good.
So when it comes to your process of, well, what I mean is drawing and writing. Well, not drawing, actually. When it comes to writing, you usually outline what you do, or do you just wing it?
I usually start with winging it, and then once I have an idea of where I'm going, I'll start an outline just to make sure I fit everything in the right spot. So I just like to mix it up sometimes. But outlines can definitely be helpful.
Your technique sounds a lot like, from what I understand, what Howard's technique was.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. He had outline, and he would wing it, but he always tried to keep an eye on his outline. So he was very careful.
That's good.
Tolkien, though, I find he winged it a lot.
That's impressive.
Pretty fun. But when it comes to his Silmarillion, you can see he outlined a lot. So
yeah, I could see you would need that.
So Just to understand, like when you're creating, is it all sound or do you listen to music or anything?
I usually listen to music, yes. I have like 50 playlists on my phone, and I make one for each story, and usually one for characters as well, so that helps a lot with getting the right mindset for each one.
Oh. Well, I saw in the index the wing swap. Is it generally music like that you listen to when creating?
Yes, usually. I usually don't listen to lyric music when I'm writing because it can be kind of distracting. But I do like a lot of different instrumentals, like classical or from different films. So yeah, just kind of eclectic, but just keep it with the theme. I found a lot of good epic music, which helps.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's actually quite a few on YouTube as well, if you can listen there. So,
Okay.
yeah, sometimes there's some really nice soundtracks that are put together.
Well, I'm gonna have to demand that as payment for using my platform.
Okay.
I need epic music.
Yeah. It's a huge help, so yeah, I can definitely send you some.
Okay. So when it comes to drawing, which part do you like the most? Drawing people, landscapes, painting, coloring?
I would say it's drawing people. I'm not fond of backgrounds. They're very tricky. I mean, I like details. I like looking at details. I like reading details. I like writing them, but I do not like drawing them. It takes a lot of time. So...
And yet you're so good at it.
Oh, thank you. So I definitely like drawing people and then coloring. Of course, I love the colors.
You really do need to try to become a colorist.
Yeah.
In the comic book industry.
That would be interesting.
But yeah. When I read your work, I had the same feeling in a way of some of the old fairy stories, such as from the Fairy Queen, by I forget his name, but from Queen Elizabeth's reign, as well as Perrault and the old Disney films. Are they an influence on your work?
I actually do have a collection of old fairy tale books and other myths and legends that I picked up from my grandmother's house years ago. I do love reading old fairy tales, so I have read quite a few. I've researched some, so I'd say fairy tales are definitely one of my favorite genres. I've not tried writing one, but I just love the feel of them. Yeah, one of my favorites is The Glass Princess, I think it's called, and then The Swan Maiden, other ones like that. So. And of course the traditional Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, all of those are good.
Okay. Well, I also noticed there's a lot of emphasis on nature and birds. Mm-hmm. Your work. Why is that?
Well, it was important for wing swept especially, but I know for me, I'm sure there are other people who find this as well. Nature is just something that is really it's really soothing. Even if I'm having a really bad day, it's like the outside that is always good. I love that nature doesn't change and how beautiful it is. It's always just calming. It's a great inspiration, and I feel really close to God when I'm out there. So, I don't know, I guess I love to bring that into my stories as well. Just trying to show people that same feeling if I can.
Now, I'm going to throw a hardball question here.
Okay.
What do you think of some Christians who say that fantasy is demonic. Mythic fiction is counter to Christ. What do you say to that?
I don't know, that's kind of a really weird view to me, because Christ himself would use parables, and parables are fiction. He uses them as a teaching method. And that's what fiction is really good at. It teaches us how to make the right choices. It teaches us how to actually realize lessons in a setting that actually we can relate to. I find it's a lot easier to learn from fiction sometimes than from a very theological work. Just, I don't know, there's a better connection there. So I'm sure that's what Christ knew when he was using it himself. So I really think any Christians who say that didn't actually read the Bible or something. That's just very strange to me. I guess they consider it a bunch of lies, but then you'd have to say that Christ was making up those stories as well. And then that would also be lies, and Christ can't lie. So I don't know. I don't know where they're coming from with that. I guess they must assume that they've read bad fiction. Like, that's all they've ever read, and so they assume that all fiction is bad? I don't know.
So is fiction lying? Or just simply an expression of philosophy? In a way.
It's definitely more of an expression. It's definitely not lying. You're not saying this definitely happened. In most cases, I mean, if you can be Tolkien and present it as a mythology, and that's not lying.
Yeah. So would you say like Tolkien, that mythology contains a grain of the truth, and that it is in a way a window to the story of Christ?
Yes, I agree with that. I wouldn't know how to put it better than that, but I do think that it helps us to see God a little better. Like, if it's done properly, I think it can definitely draw us a lot closer to beauty and to truth than other genres can.
Yeah. I definitely agree. So on that note, what is your intention when you're writing? What I mean is Howard wanted to create mythology or text it.
Mm-hmm.
And Tolkien one for England. As well as it's all a love letter of sorts to his wife and kids.
Yeah.
But what is the driving force for your mythology?
Really, I just want to create something that is beautiful and good, that can help people, even in some small way. I just want to be able to create things with God, use my talents for things that I hope are making him smile, and I hope it will make other people smile. Because creating is a huge responsibility, especially if you're creating your own world, your own characters, your own story. It's with great power comes great responsibility. If you want to quote Spider-Man, it's very important to be mindful of what you're supposed to use it for. It has to be for good and for truth and for beauty. That's really all I want, just to make something beautiful.
Okay. So it's really a mythology dedicated to beauty.
Yes.
You sound like Tom Builder from Pillars of the Earth. Ever read that book?
No, I have not.
It's humor and interesting.
Okay.
Because the writer Ken Follett is an atheist who dislikes a lot of Christianity. But he wrote a book in 87, which was meant to be his love letter to cathedrals, because he loves cathedrals.
Wow.
And in the writing of it, he wanted to convey the motivation of the men and women who built cathedrals. And so he studied the medieval period intensely. And so his characters say things like a cathedral is a home to God, and that if they can give him a home and a home for their hopes to give him a smile, they'll have done their work.
Yeah.
And the motivation of one of the main characters to build this cathedral is just because it'd just be beautiful. And that's his religion. God is beautiful. So therefore, he must build something beautiful for God.
Yes.
And this is from an atheist.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. But when it comes to writing and art, would you say intention is important?
Yes. I think that would be very important. I mean, you have to have a goal in mind for a lot of things, and definitely have to know what you want that work to accomplish, even if it's just a small goal, small intention of just being beautiful. I think that's very important because it goes into the work and it helps to shape the work. So yeah, I would say that's definitely important, really, in anything.
Well, I think this might be one of the shortest interviews I've done.
Wow.
Sad.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yeah. It was boatloads of fun.
Yes.
I just don't have any more. So it was great having you on the show.
Thank you. It was nice.
Thank you. So I think people should try checking out your Substack.
Sure.
Which will be in the description.
Okay. Thank you.
Anytime. And also, I would highly recommend everyone check out your books. Where can they find them?
Okay, so you can find them at Amazon, as well as my publisher, which is En Route Books and Media. You can also locate them on Barnes & Noble and a few other booksellers. Like, pretty much if you look anywhere that will sell Kindle books, you'll find them. So I will send you some links so that if you'd like, you can post those in the description box as well.
Sure.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep. So I'll say toodaloo, everyone. And on my end, I would recommend checking out your Substack and also Crown of Blood. But anyway, take care, and well, see everyone next time.
Okay.
Hey everyone, I hope you all don't mind me adding at the end of this video a quick comment about how, as everyone knows, I'm a bit of a writer and I've been writing for a while on Substack now, but I recently got accepted for a great publishing deal with a really good publishing house. But the thing is, because I'm fairly new, they want to have a mixed deal. What does that mean? It means I have to pay for part of the publication myself, and they'll pay for the rest. So what this also means is that I would have to pay for a publication package of sorts, a kind of deal between them and I. Now, I don't have the means to pay for the whole thing on my own like that, because the best package, I guess, or cheapest one would probably be $7,000. So, and that's USD. So I kind of got to find a way to cough up that money. So I figured I'd ask you all if you'd be willing to support a crowdfund. The crowdfund, though, would be only for about half that cost, because I could handle the rest of the fees myself. So the whole idea is to ask for $3,500 from you all, and in return you all will get merch such as posters, mugs, another writer's books, because she's willing to team up with me on this one, and Crown of Blood. All books will be signed either by her, Daniel, or myself. Well, Crown of Blood will obviously be signed by both Daniel and I. And we will ship it out to you, and the money will be used purely for publication purposes. And yeah, I hope you all will check out the link below. We've got a great many perks, a great many offers. Hopefully you all will find that they're suitable. We can't offer the book as such because it's not been published, and it'd be about a year away from now. So I don't think anyone would be willing to wait a full year to get a book. So this seems to me the better option. Now, if anyone would prefer the book, I'll think about putting it up. But like I said, I can't guarantee that. But do let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And I do hope, if you have the means, you will support this crowdfund. And I hope you all have a great day. Take care.